Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. At the turn of the year, I wrote about the T factor and how that could disproportionately influence the course of this year. I'm guessing that I don't need to tell this audience who the T factor stands for. And I believe that we're now in the throes of what I call a U3 world, a world that is uncertain, unpredictable, and unorthodox. And this is evident in our news feeds as it is in conversations between heads of state. This is therefore an interesting time, I believe, to talk about globalization and building India's next global conglomerate. I will start by taking you back in time. The year was 1969, in a business environment in India that was marred by draconian controls and stifling regulations. My father, Aditya Birla, took a very giant leap not just for his own business, but for Indian business as a whole. He made a pioneering move by setting up manufacturing units in Thailand. He embraced globalization 22 years before globalization had even become a part of our lexicon in India. And our success in Thailand and subsequently in Indonesia acted as a springboard for our global ambitions. On one of my earlier global acquisitions in 1998, which took our group to Canada, where we acquired two pulp units. We had a very interesting experience. Back then, selling the India story was no easy task. To many in the West, India was distant, unfamiliar, and very frankly, very third world. My colleagues found themselves in front of employee unions, in front of the provincial government, making presentations that went far beyond the balance sheet. They had to showcase India itself even before presenting our credentials. Fast forward to today, and the contrast couldn't be starker. From America to Africa, Indian capital is sought after. A seller who is looking to sell an asset no longer sees an Indian acquirer as being an uncertain acquirer. Instead, they see stability, they see entrepreneurship of high caliber, they see a future that is secure. So that is the distance that India and Indian businesses have traveled, more so in the last one decade than perhaps even before that. From having to present our credentials, we have evolved today into a global enterprise operating in 41 countries, spread across 6 continents with over 185,000 employees. This journey offers some insights into building a global conglomerate, which I've been asked to share with you today. Let me start with the first, which is what I call sanity over vanity. Every time we have acquired or invested overseas, it has been driven by a clear and a very compelling business rationale. Expansion, after all, must be guided by logic and not by bravado. The temptation to chase global ambitions without having a clear-cut strategy in place can be costly. What looks dazzling in the short term will become a burden in the mid to long term. Our approach has been quite simple: go global in businesses where we have a strong foundation at home in India. For example, when we acquired mines in Australia, it was to secure raw material for our copper smelter in India. When Hindalco took over Novelis, a company headquartered in Canada and 3 times its size then, it wasn't just about scale. It was about gaining a significant presence in the downstream part of the aluminium value chain. To put it in context, Hindalco then had a presence in the upstream metal part of the value chain, which means that we made aluminium, and metal prices are always volatile and not in the control of producers. Novelis, which we acquired, on the other hand, manufactures aluminium rolled products used in automotive and beverage cans. In fact, 1 out of every 3 beverage cans in the world is made by Novelis products. This downstream part of the businesses have higher margins, they are less volatile, and hence by acquiring Novelis, we were creating a company with far less volatility in earnings and higher margins. So the point I'd like to make that every move has had purpose, every investment has had a plan, and that rigor and that discipline has made all the difference. Second, I believe that integration is as much about mutual respect as it is about gaining efficiencies. After the Novelis acquisition, plenty of newsprint was spilled predicting integration hurdles and cross-cultural challenges. The skeptics were certain that there would be a mismatch between the two cultures, and to be fair, challenges did arise, some expected, others surprisingly subtle. One of them was as mundane as it was symbolic, transitioning Novelis employees to an Aditya Birla Group email ID. A simple IT change, one might think, but identity runs deeper, and changing it overnight would have sent the wrong signal that all of us are taking over all of you. We took our time, almost a year actually, before making the change. The message was clear that if we were this thoughtful about something as small as an email address, we would be equally, if not much more deliberate about larger cultural and operational integration. In fact, our approach to integration has always been measured. Even before we place a bid to acquire an asset, we typically would do a thorough assessment of the talent, ensuring compatibility of people with our ethos. And as a result of this, we have made very few changes in the senior management teams of the acquired businesses. This also ensures continuity. As an example, the deputy CFO of Novelis, when we acquired it, is today the CEO of the company. Third learning, globalization is not a one-way process. Globalization is far more reciprocal than it might seem. With each foray into new territories, we have assimilated novel ideas and embraced diverse perspectives. This dynamic exchange encompasses just about everything. For example, from the impressive safety standards of our American units to the frugal engineering of some of our Asian operations. And most often, people are the conduits of this exchange. Therefore, we have a well-established protocol on global mobility of high-quality talent across the group. This would mean, for example, providing our American colleagues a chance to work in the fastest-growing economy in the world. This mobility gives our talent wider exposure, new experience horizons, and this in turn creates more consummate leaders who can take on larger roles in the group. I think an intended consequence of a global corporation should be to create a global cadre of leadership. I believe that in this world where national markers of identity are gaining increasing prominence, global corporations like the Aditya Birla Group have the powerful ability to unite people. Through a shared purpose and a common set of values, a truly global corporation has the ability to bind a diverse workforce, one that has an unwavering commitment to growth. And that brings me to my fourth learning, the role of the corporate center. In our experience, a high-quality, internationally benchmarked and an active corporate center is critical to the cohesion and long-term resilience of a global corporation. A dynamic corporate center can help set standards, facilitate cross-pollination of best practices across businesses, and be the conscious keeper of sorts. In an era of increasing complexity, the corporate center also serves as a discerning lens, evaluating growth opportunities with both a strategic as well as a dispassionate eye. Instead of being a passive coordinating hub, it is the steadying force of the global engine, providing both momentum and course correction in equal measure. And finally, my last reflection, globalization is not about building outposts. In the Aditya Birla Group, we see ourselves as a truly global company that takes pride in being Indian at its origins. Unlike the traditional Western model of peripheral outposts in different markets, our global operations are integral to our strategic vision. Each market serves a distinct mission, ensuring that expansion is not merely about a footprint and geography, but about meaningful participation in global value chains. For example, we have an ongoing $4 billion investment in a greenfield aluminum rolling and recycling mill in Alabama in the US, which is our largest investment in any single project anywhere in the world to date. And this project underscores this approach. Through this investment, we are making a demonstrative commitment to continue to grow with our beverage packaging and our automotive customers to meet the needs of low-carbon, highly sustainable aluminum solutions. In fact, our customer base across our businesses is globally distributed, and our investments reflect a singular priority, that of serving them effectively wherever in the world they might be. Take our carbon black business as an example. The largest use of carbon black is in tires. Our production facilities across 14 countries cater to the local demand of our global customers. This is as opposed to producing in just one or two countries in the world and then supplying globally. This enables us to respond to our customer needs with agility and with local insight, and that in some ways is the essence of a truly global corporation. Being deeply global and at the same time unmistakably local. I believe that India's greatest contribution to the evolving global order may well be a redefinition of globalization itself, one that is shaped by an Indian ethos, a more inclusive, more accepting form of globalization. I've always believed that success in global markets builds economic power for the country. Indian businesses that compete and win abroad elevate India's economic status, create jobs, and foster innovation. They strengthen India's influence in trade, policy, and geopolitics, reinforcing India's role as a key player in the global economy. I hope that our journey of the Aditya Birla Group inspires many more Indian companies to take bold strides internationally. Their success in some ways will be India's success. The globalization of business, even in general, is an unfolding reality. For us, what has once been a lonely step onto the world stage is now a confident stride. Yet the next frontier will demand even more capital, more capabilities, and more insightful imagination, and the ability to not just compete, but also to shape global industries and set new standards globally. The world is watching India with new expectations, and I'm sure that India Inc. will live up to these expectations and also define a bold new future on the global stage. Thank you.
Mr. Birla, could we please request you to stay on the stage, please, sir? And I'd now like to invite Mr. Rahul Kaval, News Director, Ashtak and India Today, and also Executive Director, Business Today, to have an interesting Q&A session now with you on stage.
Mr. Birla, thank you very much. Can we have a very warm round of applause for that insightful address?
Thank you.
I don't know how many of you sitting here know that this is the 30th year that Kumar Birla has been running the Aditya Birla Group. And this is a massive responsibility he was thrust into at a very young age. And from there, he's grown into the responsibility every year. And when it seems that they've already done everything that they could possibly do, he finds new opportunities, creates new businesses, and the new businesses are as successful as the businesses that he inherited. And that's quite a skill. We want to keep this very short, so we won't take too much time. But I want you to give us a broad sense of your vision for Viksit Bharat 2047. The Prime Minister Modi talks about taking India to the position of a developed country by 2047. Looked at from your lens, Mr. Birla, do you think India, in the way that we are progressing, is on track to achieve that? We've got the External Affairs Minister here. And if you were to do some policy prescriptions to those in power, what more would you like to see for India to be able to achieve its true potential?
So my answer to your question is yes, I do think that we're on the right track. 2047 is a while away, so a little bit of crystal gazing, but I think if you look across the world, we're the only large economy of our size growing at 6, 7, 8% annually, which I think in itself is a huge achievement. Not just us, but the world realizes that. And this is our time in the sun. I think everyone in this room knows that. You feel proud being Indian after a very long time. So yes, I think we're on track. There's so many things that one can point out to. I think, a lot of the problems that we think are Indian problems are unique to the Indian economy from the vantage of leading a company across so many countries. Some of these problems actually are generic across global economies. Let's say environment, for example. Whilst we talk a lot about environment and the shift that we need to make to green, that's that's an issue that companies globally are grappling with in the corporate context. So I think, yes, I think that our government is doing a great job. Kudos to them. Policy stability, great optimism about India, things happening on the ground, large investment in infrastructure, which was lacking up until a few years ago. So I think I feel proud of being an Indian industrialist, because we're seen with a whole new set of eyes now.
One of the things you've been very successful at is opportunity spotting. Given the vast array of what you inherited, determining which new sectors to go in, do you want to share some tips with those sitting here and watching you? How do you pick which sector to enter, and how is it that you're able, for example, for paints or for jewelry, now cosmetics, how is it that you're able to establish market leadership in such short time, given the complexity of entering new businesses?
So I think we are very driven by scale and size, and our underlying philosophy for each business is to be the number one or number two player in terms of scale and size. Also, we need a right to win. So for example, in the opportunity about an entry into the paints business, we have overlapping distribution with our existing white cement business, which gave us a right to win. Of course, there was a lot of planning that went into it, 3 years of a bunch of people that kept growing in size, planning with a lot of precision, and some very insightful thinking, greenfield thinking, blue sky thinking, whatever you might call it. And I think that the team has come together really well. We've commissioned 5 plants in 9 months, and the 6th plant commissions next month. With that, we have 40% of the Indian paint industry's capacity that's been built over, I think, 4 decades. 40,000 dealers now, and by the end of the year, I think we'll have a very impressive market share. So I think a lot of thinking through, I think planning is a very important part of it. Execution, it's about also pooling the group's resources as also the group's experience, knowledge pools together. So we have experience in manufacturing, we had an overlap in terms of distribution, like I told you. So it's about pooling in all the group's experiences and pulling all our strengths in one direction.
You spoke of building the next Indian global conglomerate. The biggest headline internationally is everything that's happening in the United States with President Donald Trump and the tariffs that he's threatening to impose on India. As the head of one of India's largest conglomerates and India's biggest investor in the US, how do you look at the noise that's coming out of DC? How much of a factor is it when you weigh your investments in the US and your business plans going forward? How are you trying to calibrate these choppy waters?
So I think as it happens, our business, we are the largest investor in the US from India. Thanks for saying that. Very few people talk about that. We don't talk about it actually, to be honest, too much. Our operations in the US, they supply to our customers in the US. They don't really import too much or export too much. Our operations, it just so happens from India, don't export too much to the US. So I think we remain relatively unscathed. We don't have a situation where we have production facilities in the US which need to import, let's say, from somewhere else in the world. So we, I think, remain in a solid situation.
And lastly, when I was at the World Economic Forum at Davos recently, I had the opportunity to interview your son, who's just completing college at the Harvard Business School this semester. You've inducted your son and your daughter into different boards. How do you look at the issue of transitioning to the next generation? What are you trying to tell your children about the kind of values that you'd want them to build the future of the Aditya Birla Group?
They're 30 and 27. They're a little bit beyond the point where I'm going to tell them things. But they've been exposed to business right from a very young age. They understand the value system of the family. They're 7th generation. They feel a great sense of pride about what the family stands for. Transition just doesn't happen like that, especially in business families. I think it just happens over a period of time. Both of them, I think, are very hardworking, very ambitious kids, don't want to be supported by the father unless they really need the support, which is very few and far apart occasions. They want to build with me the ABG of tomorrow.
The most amazing thing, and I'm sure you'd find this quite remarkable, is that unlike most conservative Indian business fathers, Kumar Birla never really pushed his children into a particular direction. One played cricket, the other became a pop star before joining the business, and that's something I've always been very curious about. Because very often, all Indian business families would like for their children to stick to the conventional path. Was that ever a factor when your son was roughing it out in Rewa, in Madhya Pradesh, slumming it out in some relative sense with the cricketers who were playing, or your daughter touring all across the country? Did you ever feel that, what are they doing? Is this, what would the rest of the world say? Is this, how would they react? Or how did you make your peace with that?
No, so we spoke about it a lot, my wife and I, and both were very keen to pursue, in the case of my daughter, her singing, in the case of my son, professional cricket. It took us a little bit of time to put, to wrap our heads around it. But we just felt that they'd learn and grow from that experience. I think it's very important for children, for the next generation, to have an identity of their own. And if they can achieve that even before coming into the organization and becoming actively involved, I think that's great. I think that they've both grown a lot from their respective experiences. I mean, if you're a singer, you can't have a parent coming and helping you to sing. Or play on the field, on the pitch. So they've grown up to be, I think, much more worldly wise, much more empathetic, with a lot more discipline than Nija and I would have been able to instill in them.
Well, it takes a lot of courage to allow for that to happen and for that process to play itself out. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a very warm round of applause? Kumar Mangalam Birla. Thank you very much. Absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Birla. Could I please request you to be on the stage while I invite Mr. Arun Puri, the Chairman and the Editor-in-Chief of India Today Group, to please come up on stage. Sir, request you to please be on the stage, Mr. Birla. Just for a moment, as we felicitate you with a token of appreciation, Mr. Arun Puri. A huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Mr. Birla. Thank you so much, sir, for your inspiring words. Warm round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, Mr. Birla, for being with us today.